GTA parent company Take-Two Interactive got some flack the other day because they announced a quote-unquote restructuring, which is just code for laying people off. What this was a announcement that they are laying off roughly 5% of its global workforce, which is around 600 people, which just tells you how many employees they have. It's absolutely crazy. But I want to be clear at the outset. Take-Two is a massive company that owns multiple like mobile studios that make sports games. And yes, they also own the Borderlands Gearbox. They also own them now. They bought them from Embracer. So they're massive. So just because they lay off 5% of their workforce does not mean that they're laying off people that are working on GTA 6, to be clear. I saw some people saying that. That's not what it means. But with this, the exact phrasing of this, in a statement published Tuesday, the company said that the cuts would result in the cancellation of unnamed in-development game projects. Okay. Take-Two estimates the cuts will save at around $160 million annually. The plan is expected to be largely complete by December of this year. The announcement comes weeks after it was confirmed that Take-Two is acquiring Borderlands maker Gearbox for $460 million. Take-Two CEO Strauss Zelnick had indicated that it intended to reduce costs earlier this year, but claimed at that time that there were, quote, no current plans for layoffs. Last February, the company implemented an earlier cost reduction program, which saw it trying to make annual savings of $50 million. This resulted in a round of layoffs the following month, with its staff at several divisions affected, including its indie publishing label Private division. In the year since Take-Two's previous cost reduction program, layoffs have become a frequent occurrence across the games industry. Job losses across the industry were widespread last year, with 9,000 layoffs estimated, and they don't appear to be slowing this year. The estimated total layoff numbers for 2024 has already reached 8,800, according to technical artist Farhan Noor's website Games Industry Layoffs, which has been tracking confirmed games industry layoffs cuts since the start of last year. We've done segments on Luke Stevens Live before. You guys might have seen where we just did some napkin math, breaking down how expensive games are to make, and it starts to put in perspective how a lot of this isn't sustainable. Because like we said, if you're putting a game together in a really expensive city in the US or in Europe, if you have to pay for office space, you have to pay for server infrastructure, you have to pay for health insurance, you have to pay for their 401k contributions, you have to do all of this. If we just say ballpark, including the people that are paid way more and the people paid less, if we just averages it out to about 100,000 per employee per year for total costs of that employee, and then you say that you have a team of, say, let's say you're making a live service game, and you have a team of, let's say, 350 people. And then those people work for, let's say, 5 years on a game. All of a sudden, your game has just cost $175 million to put together. And that doesn't include any additional costs of like licensing materials. It doesn't include marketing materials. None of that is factored in here. And so if you're selling this game at, trying to make back $175 million, and you're selling it at $70 day one, and we're saying this is like a live service game, so we're saying like $70 day one, you have to sell it at full price, and you're selling through like the PlayStation Store, Steam, and the Xbox Store, each of which is going to take roughly 30% of your gross revenues. If we say 175 million, I'm a professional streamer, divided by 42, how many copies do we need to sell? 4.1, let's call it $4.2 million or million copies of the game to break even. That would put it as one of like the most successful games of the year, and that's to break even. So games are just freakishly expensive now to produce. And it's not just games, it's pretty much everything nowadays. It's just freakishly expensive. And as a result, a lot of these studios can't really justify trying to make 15 different live service games, trying to make a bunch of other stuff that might not break even because it just doesn't work anymore. The math doesn't math, which is the issue that they've run into. So these layoffs are just going to keep happening because it's not going anywhere. The only way you could potentially see it changing is if we got like inflation to disappear, if we also saw rates drop so companies could start to fund a lot of these big projects with debt. like cheap debt, that could also potentially help it, but it doesn't, it's just not that simple. And I see you guys saying like, yeah, thanks Obama. I see you guys saying GTA 6 will print money. It will break even on pre-orders alone. So potentially, yes. But the thing is, everybody has already, including the executives, have already priced in and budgeted for GTA 6 breaking all those records. So when people are like, oh, I'm going to buy a share of Take-Two Interactive today because it's going to go up when that game launches. Maybe not. Maybe not. If you go back to the Take-Two, real quick, can somebody tell me what the launch date for Red Dead Redemption 2 was? 10/26/18. Thank you, nobody. Thank you. It's nobody knows, to be clear. I'm not saying nobody told me. But it was October 26th of 2018. So if we go back to 2018, Red Dead Redemption 2 sells a massive 23 million copies. This was within a few months. Jesus, dude. Within November, December, January, within like 3 months, they sold 23 million copies. But despite that, their stock still fell 13%. Did it fall that much because of the game? No. It fell because they had already priced in Red Dead Redemption 2's performance, assuming it would do this well. And you can see like at $60 each at retail, that means the Wild West game took nearly 8 years to make, generated $1.38 billion in revenue in the first quarter, not counting any money made from Red Dead Online. That blows some estimates on sales out of the water, but Take-Two's stock price has fallen 13% because the company warned that the current quarter could be weak. Because you see, in business, it's not just about an individual game. It's about consistent cash flows. It's about all this. And more than anything, especially in tech-related stocks, it's about growth. And guess what the numbers have revealed in the gaming industry for 2024? It looks like this will actually be one of the first years in a long time where the games industry is not growing. Meaning, people aren't spending more on games this year than they did last year. And I think that that's partially because there aren't as many like fantastic games out. Last year was very exceptional in a lot of ways. We're also at a weird point in the generation where we don't have a lot of first party stuff driving sales. It's only third party stuff, but the third party quality is really up in the air. It's crazy. But as a result, tech stocks do not do well when growth stops because their entire pricing models are based on assuming a lot of growth. So when growth stops, the investors stop as well. And that's the only thing that keeps these companies going and bankrolls them. So yeah, it's because we're all broke. Yeah, I mean, that's also part of it is that people just don't have as much money as they did a year ago as inflation continues to ravage us. But this is why like people will assume, oh, well, GTA 6 is going to drop and make ridiculous amounts of money. Not necessarily. For one, GTA Online, I'm not so sure that it's going to be that impressive. Like I really am not sure if they're going to figure that out at launch. Red Dead Online at launch was a disaster. And I would guess that GTA 6 at launch, or the online version when it launches, is also probably going to be a mess. Not only will there be so many players trying to get in, but also hackers are going to make it a nightmare. Like I just have very little trust in them figuring it out, Anyway, with all this, it's just, you can see they launch in October 26th, stock price at 120. And within a few weeks, the stock price is dropping and then it goes back up and it drops some more over 2019 for the year. It doesn't actually end up anywhere. It started climbing during the anticipation of Red Dead Redemption 2, but they had already priced that in. So after they priced it in, the game performed where they thought it was going to perform. And then they don't have anything else to show for it on the back end to generate revenues. And Red Dead Online kind of collapses. The stock just kind of flops. And you see it only starts to really recover during the craze of COVID when everybody was home playing GTA roleplay. And they kept selling ridiculous amounts of money or cosmetics and things. And shark cards in GTA Online. So it's just not a given that GTA 6 will make up for all of this. It's already priced in. They've already priced in that it's going to be making all of that. So it's not assumed. Unfortunately, these things are just going to keep happening because games are too expensive to make. These companies are frankly too big for the revenues that they are pulling in. And that's something that analysts have said about Ubisoft. They've said it about EA. They've said it about Take-Two. These companies are just too big for the money they make. And It's just the unfortunate reality of AAA game development that you can't really justify spending $300 million on a game that might, in some alternative universe, break even, much less make profits. So I just think we're going to see a lot fewer AAA scale games from like third-party developers. I think you'll see mainly first-party studios from like Microsoft and Sony putting those together, and like Take-Two with their big heavy hitters. But everything else, I think it's just going to continue being like we're going to continue seeing cancellations and layoffs and stuff. I don't think it's going to really change. Theodore, thank you for the super chat. GTA is the only game that can tap into the entire gaming player base. Fortnite, COD, etc. No other game can do that. Nobody's doubting that. Nobody's doubting that. And I think everybody's aware of that. It's just that everybody's already priced that in. It's like when you buy, I mean, I used to work selling apartment buildings, and when we would price an apartment building, if I price it at $1 million for a 6 unit, I'm not saying that like, yeah, it's $1 million and that's what it's worth as a building. And then you'll also get rental payments and stuff on it. No, I've priced it at that point based on the revenues it's generating, based on how much money it's going to be making, projected out years and years and years. It's not looked at in a vacuum. It's looked at with projections of future performance. And the same thing happens with game developers and studios, where they're looking at it for future revenues and profits. That's why Tesla's stock has imploded this year, because they've said, yeah, we're going to probably have a really rough year because people are just not buying luxury cars right now, and they don't have a lot of money to just casually drop on EVs. So our guidance is going to drop, and sure enough, it does drop, and their numbers aren't great. Their deliveries aren't great. They're having troubles with manufacturing and stuff, and so the stock price drops by a third. It's because all of this stuff is priced in. I know what you mean, but with such a huge release, gigantic investment fund will buy massive amounts close to release to make some profit. I don't think so. I think you'll see, just like with Red Dead Redemption 2, as we get close to the launch of GTA 6, I think you'll see you'll see retail investors buying up lots of shares of the stock, and you'll see some people riding that up. And then I think in the weeks leading up to the game's launch, once they start getting clearer ideas of exactly how many copies are selling, once they get a clear idea of what GTA Online is going to look like, all of that stuff, I think you'll see the stock start to slip a bit. And then in the weeks and months after the launch of GTA 6, I would not be surprised if Take-Two's stock continues to slip. Because after GTA 6 launches, what's the next thing? What's Take-Two's next thing? It's probably 5-6 years away. You know, like, all of these companies need steady flows of cash, and Take-Two has some sports titles. They have GTA Online, but I do think it's an assumption to think that GTA Online is just going to carry over to GTA 6 easily. I think it's going to have a lot of difficulty getting going. I do think it will eventually be very successful, because obviously players want it, but I think it's going to take some time. He took my thing.